And unfortunately, a lot of this time we're sitting down in here, people don't talk about how hard it is, how, like the failures that they went through. It's very humbling and sometimes embarrassing, but that's where the growth happens, and that's where you sort of start to come back up. And once you've sort of got the understanding of how hard it is, and then you can sort of hit that optimism level again, but you know a lot more, and that's where success seems to happen. So I'm really focused on what have we done, especially in the business every day. What do we do well? That's fantastic. Keep doing that. But what did we learn today? What did we not get well?
Welcome to the EO Business Podcast, where we explore the stories and insights of entrepreneurs who have faced and overcome significant challenges. Today, we're honoured to have Gerard Murtagh, CEO of MouldMen, Australia's leading mould remediation company based in Brisbane, and an EO member for over 18 years. Now, in this episode, you will hear Gerard's intimate stories from losing his father at 19 and having to step up as a business owner to support his family, to facing countless business failures, including nearly losing everything when his staff stole money from the business. Now, through these experiences, he has developed a crisis management framework called Don't Waste a Crisis, which represents the process we can take to help us overcome any challenges in business. Join us as we delve into these principles and Gerard's inspiring journey, offering valuable lessons for navigating and thriving through any crisis.
This video is sponsored by Outsourcing Angel, a company that connects you with top quality and affordable remote staff to handle your busy work. Whether you're looking for a social media assistant, an executive assistant, or someone to edit a podcast like this, we can help. Reclaim your time and visit outsourcingangel.com today.
Well, welcome to the show, Gerard. It's so lovely to have you on here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Well, I had the privilege to listen to your story prior to having this podcast. Amazed at the journey you've been on. You started so young. You even joined EO like 20 years ago. And the first thing I said to you is like, you look like you're only 20. So let's take us back to, your journey in business. How did you get started, and how did you get started into EO as well?
Sure. So as a young man, I knew I always wanted to be in business, and I went off to uni, and within my first year of being at uni, my father got diagnosed with cancer and passed away quite suddenly. And that sort of opened the door for me to just get straight into it. I know that one of the conversations I had with him was, you're here studying it, but you may as well just do it, because you're going to learn more on the job than what you are at school. So, it was a baptism of fire. And I was just so lucky that early on in that journey, I really was curious about mentors and getting support and realizing that I just didn't know a lot of things. And one thing led to another. And I was at an event one day and I met somebody who said, I can get you into EO. I think you need EO. And that was 19 years ago. So it feels like it was yesterday, but it was a massive pivotal moment in my life, because being so young and being so naive, I just didn't know what I didn't know. And EO was able to sort of guide me and support me and help me through those really early years to get to where we are today.
Yeah. So were you one of the youngest person in EO at the time?
I was the youngest person in EO for a very long time. Somebody once said to me that I'm the youngest, longest serving member of EO. I've been in EO for 20 years and I'm not quite 40 yet. So, but in those early years, I was very lucky. Internationally, so many people opened their doors to me, and being able to go to universities and different chapters around the world, there was always somebody that could open a door, support me, take me out for dinner, introduce me to somebody. And through this journey of being in business, I've had some great highs, some terrible lows, and EO's always been there. And my forum, I've still got the same forum, a couple of members from the same forum for the last 20 years. And that has helped, sort of gives consistency through this journey as well, because they've been on pretty much every single ride that I've been on. So yeah, it's been life-changing.
That is so impressive. So at the time you took over a different business, and then, tell us when you started MouldMen, and what is MouldMen? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so currently we have three businesses. I still have the business that I took over from my father 20 years ago. That was a small trading business, and we deal in traditional Chinese medicine. So we still run that today with my family. And then through the GFC, we sort of didn't know what was going to happen. It was an international business, it exported, and I was a little bit concerned about what was going to happen. So we went and got a government tender, pressure washing and washing down streets and graffiti and whatnot. I thought, at worst case scenario, we'll always be able to work for the government if our export business isn't able to survive this GFC. Anyway, both businesses got through that period very, very well. And then in 2011, we had a flood in Brisbane, and we had a lot of pressure cleaners, and a lot of people were asking for us to clean down their houses and what were we going to do with this thing called mould. I had no idea about mould, but I thought if there's 200,000 homes that have been inundated with water, there might be an opportunity there. And the opportunity did present itself in the form of property managers. And so I jumped over to America, to New Orleans, and they were still cleaning up from Hurricane Katrina. And that gave me the opportunity to learn from people that were still dealing with the cleanup of that disaster, bring back that knowledge, start a business. And after about 3 days of people calling me the MouldMen, I was like, I've got to change the name of our business to MouldMen, and the rest is history.
Oh, wow. And so currently, tell me about MouldMen, like the size. And I know you've got some other business that you're running. Love to hear kind of all the ventures and the things that you get up to.
Yeah, sure. So MouldMen now is in Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, and Tasmania. We have just under 100 staff. We have our main client base is property managers, insurance companies, strata companies, and then obviously private clients. The business itself, operates, very, very lean. We've had many, many highs and lows, but as a small business starting out and having to go through those processes of having to learn about owning a trades business and all the different things that come from dealing with prop tech companies to service-based providers, right through to all the different people that we need to employ and to make this business work. It's been quite a journey, and we've had some great years where we've grown at least 60% every year since about 2016, and then in 1 year we even grew 300% in 1 year, which that was in 2022-23, which was a wild ride, which also taught me a lot when we came crashing down, because you can't grow that quickly without some things falling to the wayside. And we definitely learned some very valuable lessons during that time, which has sort of shaped the way that the next sort of 10 years of that business will be able to grow. And then we also own another business, which is in the medical medium business, where we bleed animals for medical research. So that's just another offshoot of what we do. It's a very interesting business dealing in medical mediums, dealing with pharmaceutical companies and medical research facilities. And that gives us another aspect into the economies of the world and dealing with different countries and different companies around the world.
Yeah. And talking about things going down, I know you're a fan or passionate about the topic of crisis, and you're even planning to write a book on that, or you're in the middle of writing that. So tell me about, one example of a crisis that really shaped you or changed you and made you really passionate or fascinated about the process of overcoming crisis.
Yeah, I was somebody that has learned way more from failure than I did from my successes. As a young man, I couldn't read till I was 12. I was diagnosed with dyslexia, and I knew that for me to be successful, I had to work pretty much harder than everybody else. And I also, I was lucky enough to have a couple of people around me that sort of pointed out the fact that, especially in business, it's not about how smart you are, it's how well you can employ great people to be around you. So I've always had this ethos that I needed to employ great people to help me grow these businesses. And when I read books or I go to these speeches, especially through EO, I've been exposed to so many great speakers. We usually talk about these amazing people that have done amazing things, but underlining all of that is usually a failure happens first. And I know that a lot of the success of MouldMen at the start was all the failures that I'd had leading up to that, from different businesses that I've been involved in. Not everything that I've ever done has succeeded. I've been involved in nearly 20 businesses in the last 20 years. I've invested or started and then had to or started and then sold. So I had so many different stories and also experiences that were so deeply rooted in our success. But every time I read a book, it was like, this is what you need to be doing, or this is what this is how we did it. And I was like, well, what was the story behind getting to that point? Because we tend to have to go through this cycle of ignorance and optimism at the start. We don't really know. We're really excited about it. And then we sort of start to get a bit more information and, wow, this is a lot harder than what we thought. And then we sort of go down and we start to get a little bit more information and then it becomes really hard. And then you realize, okay, we're in the mud, or we're in in the dirt and it's really, really hard and we're having to grind our way out, but you've got a lot of data and it's those moments where it's really, really low and you've got your backs to the wall. That's where you learn the most. And then from there, you're able to either rebuild your business model, the process, or whatever you're trying to achieve and come out of that. And unfortunately, a lot of this time we're sitting down in here, people don't talk about how hard it is, like the failures that they went through. It's very humbling and sometimes embarrassing, but that's where the growth happens. And that's where you sort of start to come back up. And once you've sort of got the understanding of how hard it is, and then you can sort of hit that optimism level again, but you know a lot more, and that's where success seems to happen. So I'm really focused on what have we done, especially in the business every day. What do we do well? That's fantastic. Keep doing that. But what did we learn today? What did we not get well? How can what's the process that we go through every day to make sure that we're learning and growing so that we're not going back to doing the same thing over and over again and we're learning from these mistakes? So that sort of led me down this path of, understanding what do people go through and are they willing to tell the story about what was their deep crisis that they went through that completely changed the way that either they do things, how they live their life. The moment before success usually is that failure piece. And that's what I'm really focused on. So I'm in the process of writing a book called Don't Waste a Good Crisis. And that process is teaching me so much more about what other people have gone through. I'm reading stories about Elon Musk and how, they were about to, they needed funding and at the 11th hour they got funding. And without that funding, it's one of his businesses just wouldn't be here. And that's a really pivotal moment in his business. And then, he's obviously done extremely well. But it's not just these guys like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates, Steve Jobs that have done these amazing things. There's so many people living, everyday lives that are going through these tiny little crises, right through to massive crises. And it's just about trying to identify what that process is. For me personally, growing at 300%, in a year, we grew 100% in an 8-week period. We went from a 40-person company to an 80-person company in an 8-week period.
Was that a intentional thing, or was it like all of a sudden you were inundated with customers out of nowhere unexpectedly?
Yeah. So we were inundated. We had a flood in Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne. We had just launched in Sydney and Melbourne during COVID, and the phone, we grew our two businesses in Sydney and Melbourne. They both were, if you looked at them as individual business units, they grew over $1 million in the first year. They were doing $1 million by the time they got to their 1 year anniversary. So it was a really fast growth for those businesses. And then on top of that, we had these floods. So we were in those cities. We were growing organically. We were doing doing a job to. Doing a very good job to getting companies on board. And then before we knew it, we just got inundated with work. We went from about 1,000 phone calls a week to 6,000 phone calls a week. We went from a turnaround time of 24 hours to, in some cases, 6 weeks. And one of the where we were in that mindset was that we wanted to employ people. As the economy was pumping. We had lots of free cash in the market from all the stimulus programs. People were spending money and we were employing staff. And I was so excited, as somebody, that, loves business. I was meeting new people every day. I was, meeting clients, employing new people, learning about them. And I thought the business was just going extremely well. And what happened was that for a period of time, we were employing a really good team and we got to about 40 people. But to go from 40 to 80 in an 8-week period, what I did incorrectly was I trusted those 80 the same way I trusted the 40. People that had built the business up to that point, those 40, they weren't the same people or didn't have the same ethos or have the same connection to the business. We had people getting a job. They wanted to be here. It was very exciting, but they also took advantage of those opportunities. And it was a $600,000 lesson for me. We ended up finding out that there was a massive amount of money was misappropriated by a number of team members, some of which were leaders of the business, but all of which came on during that period of time. And we went from thinking that we were taking over the world to really having to put the brakes on because everything that was being reported was not true. And when we uncovered it, and then we had to remove these people from the business, and it's taken a good 18 months to sort of clean house. And it's been really hard. It's been hard on the people that have stayed. It's been really hard on our culture. and I got a lot of things wrong. Like I got so much wrong, and I realized in that
moment. How much effect did it have while things were going wrong in the company? How much did that affect the customer side of things or the reputation of the company? Did that get impacted?
Yeah, of course, there were some people like that I could imagine that didn't have the greatest of service during that time. It was very uneasy for a number of our staff. So when our staff aren't connected to the business as such, they do, they don't know what was happening. There was a lot of like, how much information do I give the team, opposed to how much do I, share, opposed to, winding the company up and just saying, we just can't get out of this, to regrouping and going, no, we're going to rebuild this. The customers, we've still always been able to maintain a good level of service. That's always been able to be something that we've been able to do. But what was affected was what was happening behind the closed doors of MouldMen. And it was probably really, really scary for a lot of people. It was very scary for me. A lot of people didn't know if they were going to lose their jobs or not. And I didn't get a lot of things right during that period of, mass exodus of staff, having to make people redundant. Finding out different things that had been done was absolutely soul destroying. But those lessons are what are going to help us grow for the next 20 or 30 years. And I know for myself, that moment, it will never happen again because of what we've been able to do. And it's funny now that we've turned that corner and we're on top of like everything that we needed to be on top of, and we built the different systems and processes in place. We've now got different processes around how we hire and how we grow, and all of these different processes and improvements that we had to make to the business to save it. That is what has enabled our business now to look forward and go, we're now going to be a much bigger force. And I know personally, every business after this is going to benefit from that. And it might be a $600,000 mistake now, but it'll probably save me millions of dollars in the future because it's going to help solidify us and strengthen our businesses going forward.
Yeah, it's so true. Even though we don't like to go through challenges, it's the only way to grow. And then when you go through it, you're like grateful for it. So what was the process that you kind of end up developing? Like you had an kind of an acronym for, I hope that's the right word, but yeah, the DWAG process that you can share with us.
Yeah, so I sort of looked at, don't waste a good crisis. It was just something that sort of came, it was fire. If we're on a podcast or...
Oh, that title itself is DW.
So the first part of the process is to document everything. So one of the things that we realized during that crisis was we had to document everything every day about what was happening because we were uncovering so much potential fraud. We found so many different things that had been that weren't, illegal. I've got to be very careful with how I say this, but it's because the process is still going on. But we found a lot of things that were not ethical. Let's just call it that. And so one of the first part of the process that we're looking at now, anytime we look at a crisis, is we document it and get all the documentation that you can from that, and bank statements. If it's a fraud, it's bank statements, it's contracts. If it's anything like car crashes, like how do you get all that information? So all that documentation actually is what saves you in the long run because you're actually collecting it as everything's going on. So obviously we track different things in our businesses every day, but are you making sure that there's a place for all of those different documents? It's not just an email that's filed away. So that documentation is really, really important. The next part of the process is to write. So as a CEO, as an owner, as a founder, I found so much peace in journaling and writing. So the W is about writing and writing every day. And it's also helped me with my notes on when I'm going back to either different like legal fights with the different individuals. I've been able to have everything documented because I write every day. And I write every day about what I've learned, what happened, what we uncovered. And, we're going through last year's financials at the moment, doing our review. And there are still things that we're finding that we didn't uncover the first time we went through, which we thought we were on top of it. And we've found that some of these things were still going on.
Yeah.
And so
when you're writing, is this for just yourself or you're writing?
Exactly right. So just for yourself, because if you can write, and I always say this to everybody or any person I talk to or mentor or talk in my forums, is writing every day enables you to connect to your subconscious as well, enables you to write and using your hand and not typing and not just writing, gives you the ability to store information a lot more so that when you have to recall it, it's there. And you've also then got it in written form, but then also you're more likely to remember it. And that was a key part of a lot of these different stages, because I've been able to then recall and say, okay, now on that day was the day we found out this sort of information. So as a CEO, I've always made sure that we're documenting. And I also do this for all of my senior leaders as well. We're constantly making sure that they're writing their notes, because their notes are what can help them when they are able to sit down with their team members, and that's to go over the past and what was probably discussed. So note taking, documenting, journaling is a really, really important part of it. So we don't waste a good crisis. So at the moment, one of the greatest things that we're being able to play with every single day is AI. And so the A is AI. Everything that we do at the moment is either building AI or working out if it's already been built so that we can then implement it. And what I found is even when some of these crises have been going on, I've asked ChatGPT of what are some of the things that I can do as an individual to get through a crisis. And sometimes the information is just what you need to be able to get through to the end of the day, because it might remind me to go for a walk, or it might give me the process to, this is an interview process while interviewing somebody about a potential fraud. These are some of the things that you need to be doing. So, and as a business owner, we are looking at every process that we've got at the moment in MouldMen, and we're trying to work out if the process needs to be improved via either a process improvement, AI or automation, or if it's a people problem that we need to be able to fix. So either through training or offboarding and getting a new person in. So AI has become a massive, big part of everything that we do, but obviously, and also learning about what to do through a crisis. Because as we talk about this, don't waste a good crisis. And the one thing that we talk about at the next is about guidance. Usually, especially with EO, there's always been somebody that's been through this before. So I was able to lean on my forum and say, this is what I'm going through and how do I get through it? And if it wasn't them, it was their lawyer, it was their accountant, or somebody else that they knew that said, hey, you think 600,000 is bad. I know somebody that was 6 million or 60 million. There was always somebody had a deeper story that was able to teach me a lot more about what I was going through. And that gave me a lot. I was able to keep me really, really calm during this process. I'm going to get through it, but what I need to do is make sure that I keep doing the things every single day to get through it. The C of don't waste a good crisis is completely the opposite to crisis, which is calm. And one of the things that really, really helped me through this process is meditation and journaling, but also staying calm. I know the day that somebody came into my office, and that one of the different misappropriations of funds was about a $350,000 incident that they were able to do over a number of months. I remember returning to my bin next to my desk here and vomit. And it was one of those moments where I was like, I just couldn't believe that had happened. And what I was seeing on a spreadsheet and what I was seeing in Xero was not actually true. And that was obviously a huge problem. But through all of this is the calmness and trying to find calm instead of being so reactive, like being a reactive person and being able to, let's just go fix it. Being like, obviously we see a problem as entrepreneurs, we just want to fix it. I had to keep reminding myself to stay calm. The calm is so much harder than some of this all this other stuff is just work. You just can work as, but when your mind is racing at 3:00 in the morning because you've got a BAS bill, a payroll bill, you've got payroll to meet, you've got credit cards, you've got company, you've got people to service. If I didn't stay calm through this process, I probably would have, put myself into a ditch. It was a really scary moment, but at the same time, I had to keep reminding myself that, hey, this is not the end of the world. We just have to keep working and getting through that, but you have to stay calm. If I lost my cool, it could have been a lot worse, and being able to be patient and calm has actually uncovered a lot more by being less reactive, because I was able just to sit back and say, maybe calmness is where we need to be right now. And calmness and also enabled me to bide my time and allow people to come to me and say, hey, I think there's something over here you need to see. So,
I totally agree with you. I think calm, it's harder to do, but I think it also helps when you've gone through lots of crises in the past and you've gone through it, and so then that if you've gone through it before, it will happen and you'll be able to do it again. Would you agree with that?
100%. And that's where the writing comes in for me, because I'm able to relive those moments and go back and see, like, I was in a really, really bad place, but look at where I am now. And, when we look at, any sort of tasks, normally people are just looking ahead to the top of the mountain. And as you're going up the mountain, if you're, going on a bushwalk, you keep looking up, you're like, wow, we've still got a long way to go. We've been doing this for 3 hours or whatever. And you're constantly looking up. But what we failed to do is then turn around and look backwards and realize how far we've come. And that's where you realize that you look to the bottom, you're like, wow, if you can see your car or the ocean or where you've come from, it's like, we've actually moved a massive amount of distance. But normally when we're constantly looking forward, we're going, that's where we're going, that's where we're going, that's where we're going. So we have a bit of a thing here at MouldMen where if we're talking about goal setting or we're talking about like a task that we're trying to achieve, we might have a meeting that say, let's just give it an hour. We'll spend 5 minutes on the goal. Where are we going? And then we spend 55 minutes looking at how far we've come. Because when you turn around and you look back, you realize, hang on a minute, look at what we've learned. Look at where we've come from. Look at what we do differently next time. And then, we've always, you've got Moore's law. You're constantly doubling, every year. That sort of enables you to go from, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. And those last couple of jumps are huge. They're huge hyper growth moments. But if you constantly look at how far you come, you're sort of only gone from 2 to 4, when really you're about to go to 8, 16, and then 32. So we were always looking at our businesses as where we've come. And that's where the documentation comes in. That's where the writing comes in. And that's why it's a big part of that process, is because people won't be disheartened by the process if they can see how far they've come and not how far they've still got to go. Because if we're growing and as people, as humans, we're growing, we're getting better, and we're constantly just getting those little tiny incremental wins along the way. They then build that muscle, and before you know it, you're away. And, you might have one of these hyper growth moments, which, for us now, we've been able to maintain these even though we had this downturn and we had to put the business into sort of crisis mode, we're still at that level revenue wise, which was far greater than what we were at, in 2022. So we've been able to maintain that. And that next jump, because of what we've learned, that's what's going to make this business even bigger than what we could ever have imagined 2 years ago. So that's where, looking at how far you've still got to go is irrelevant to us. It's always how far we've come.
Yeah, that's amazing. Very inspiring, by the way. I really love that you're spending a lot more time celebrating. And I too just believe in gratitude, just every day we've also implemented like an automation that pops up that I make the team write 3 things they're grateful for every day. And if one person wrote 1, I'm like, where's the other 2? I force them to really think. I have another question around, I guess when you first started as an entrepreneur, you were a different kind of leader. I mean, you had no idea what you were doing. If you were to compare yourself then to now, like how would you describe your growth as a person or as a leader?
I look at myself, I'm different from what I was yesterday, to be honest. So 20 years ago, I look at myself as a 20-year-old and I meet 20-year-olds that work for me now, and I think, wow, how did anybody give me a chance? Because I look back at these photos of myself and I'm like, wow, I was just so naive. So for me personally, a lot of where I was early on in my journey was what did I want to get? Like it was always about trying to achieve different things. And a lot of the time it was material things. I wanted to have a business of a certain size. I wanted to do these different things. And being 20, and especially being in EO, I had my forum buddies were in their 40s and here I am at 20, and you sort of really can't compare yourself when you're just starting. However, as somebody that, it was just starting, I really did want to be as successful as they were. But I saw that as a bit of a material thing. What had to happen for me is to just constantly fail so many times to realize that the success comes, but it comes through the process. Yeah, the times that I have wished for success or thought, why aren't we there yet? It was usually because I was pushing the process and I wasn't actually being calm and actually just relaxing and going, you know what? You're doing the work, you're getting better. Look at how far you've come, and let's keep grinding on this process. And that's the person that I am sort of today, where all of those things that we've now been able to achieve, they're great things. They're amazing, achievements. But as I am as a human being, I'm so excited, or more so excited about the person that I've become. So as a leader, back then, I was just pushing. I just was pushing for success, and I did want my team to come along that journey with me. And I thought the people that I employed, 13 years ago, that were, I thought they were going to stay with me on this journey. But it's hard being being inside this head 24 hours a day. So having to work with me for 8 to 10 hours is pretty hard for anybody. So having that process, or having that process around the team and developing them, has enabled me to sort of realize that people are going to join our business. They're going to help us along that way. They're going to get better. We're going to give them all the skills, and they'll either stay with us on this journey, or what they'll do is they'll end up leaving the business and going off and doing and working for another business and taking those skills with them. And I'll be eternally grateful for the work they did for me now. And hopefully they'll always have a part of MouldMen in whatever that they do. So now the process is about making sure that I'm constantly getting better and I'm being better as a leader, and I'm constantly learning, constantly reading, constantly listening to different books. And then hopefully people stay on the journey with us. And if they don't, then we appreciate them, we celebrate them, we say goodbye to them, and then we wish them well.
Yeah, I love that. I totally agree with that as well. So it sounded like at the beginning you felt like success was all about money, and you thought money was going to make you happy. And what does success mean for you now? Time is what's quite important. Is the number one thing.
I love working and I love what I do. I'm very fortunate to come to work with some amazing people every single day, and do amazing things, and be involved in extremely interesting businesses. However, I understand that as I've gone along this journey, the one thing that is the most important is time. I try and create time wherever I can, time to spend with my kids, with my family, and then doing the things that I'm really, really passionate about. If I was sort of focused all on, money, or thinking that money was actually the success, I probably wouldn't prioritize the other parts of my life that are so important to me. Like for me, spending time with my kids, I was very fortunate enough just to recently be skiing with my kids, in New Zealand, and there's nothing better than chasing a 6-year-old down a mountain who's got absolutely no fear. And that to me was, I just remember like looking at that moment and going, I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life. And because he is just he's a ball of energy, and I'm so grateful that my son's in my life. But for me, success is time with him, time doing the things that I love, being able to give back to the people that want guidance from me, or want mentorship, or want a coffee, or want some time, being able to give them time to help them on their journey. Really, really important to me. And then just minimizing the time that I have to be doing things that aren't going to serve me. And that's the big thing now, is saying no to things, saying no to a lot of things, so that I can say yes to the most important parts of my life.
Yeah, you raise a really good point. And I think most people do know that they want to free up time and have more time, but not many know how to actually design it to make sure that they have the time to do the other important parts. So, how did you design that time? How did you set those boundaries? Do you make sure that you work 3 days and not, and spend time with the kids? How do you structure your time?
Yeah, so I have not nailed this at all. I am definitely a student of the game. There is absolutely I am working on this every single day. Even while I was in New Zealand, I was still waking up early and working late and doing things like that. So I'm not the epitome of somebody that's nailed this. But it's something that, I look at this as perfection is potentially the goal, but it's not achievable. As long as we're working each day to get to perfect, then I'm okay with it. I design my life around the fact that, I built my office with a gym here with, a sauna and ice bath and all of the things that I need for my mental well-being. So I can do it here when I'm at the office and maximize or minimize the time that I'm having to drive to a gym. I can have people come to me. So I maximize that time here. And then when it comes to the children, it's about do I get to work out, but then be able to take them to school, then be back at the office. And then in the afternoons, it's, or in the evenings, it's how do I maximize that time? But don't get me wrong, I'm still working at night. I have clients in the US for some of my businesses. I've got clients in South Africa at the moment that we're talking to. So there's a lot of different moving parts in my life. And there are by no means, anybody watching this that knows me just would laugh their ass off at the fact that I'm talking about this. But it really is something that I'm trying to work out and trying to create time, because as we transition into these next years, my daughter is nearly 13. She's got 5 years left of school, and then my son's just starting at school. But it's I know that I've got these finite time with them, and once they're gone, they're gone. So I'm not nailing this at all, but I am trying, and I also know that being an entrepreneur means that and especially in this day and age with phones, you're never not connected. So it's about those principles. Like, I've really got to have a better process around my phone and around emails and around how I work. So usually I have a rule that if I'm doing any one task for a certain period of time, I try and give it to someone else. And I try and work out how to afford to have somebody in my life that can take that off me. Because if I'm doing a task that's a low priority task, but it's taking up a lot of time, then I'm not working on what's important. And one day, hopefully I'll get to a point where there's a lot of these tasks are being done by great people, and hopefully they're much better at it than me and much smarter than me, that's the goal. And that way they do those tasks, and then I can then work on what's important. And that gives me the ability to work on things that are, the $10,000, $100,000, $1 million tasks that will then provide opportunities for them in the future. So I'm not just trying to run off and not be at work because I'm trying to not have this great life. But what I am trying to do is create time in my life so that I can think and strategize about what's important for the business. Because if I'm in the business and I'm just frantic all the time, then I'm not actually being able to work on it. And sometimes the best time to work on the business is not to be in it. And so that's one of the things that I try and do, get away. And that's where I do some of my best work.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And look, bravo to you for recognizing and working towards it, because I've met many entrepreneurs who tell me that I love working, it's like, it's like, I love the challenge, and they're not even aware that they're stressed out or they're not spending time in other areas. So this leads me to just the last question. I love talking to you, by the way. I could go on for hours with you. But ultimately, with everything that you're trying to do, I know you're trying to be a great dad, you're trying to be everything. Like, what do you want the world or people around you to remember you for?
The goal with anybody that comes in contact with me, or through a podcast like this, or a coffee, or a conversation, working for me, or friends and family, is that at some point I'm able to provide an opportunity for them, or also be able to teach them something, or I'm able to learn something from them too. I think that legacy is a really important part. Where one of the things that I've realized is that, like, one of the best thing that you can ever do in your life is to find what your gift is, and then the second part of that is just to give it away. So I guess for me, one of my gifts is being able to look at the world in a different way. And I've got this beautiful neurodiversity that I've just sort of learnt about, that it has enabled me to be aware of, how differently I see the world. But then from there, I'm able to, strategize to maximize that potential in my own life, like the lives of my staff, my family. So my goal is to learn all these things, and then to be able to then give it away to the people that want to listen. If it's my kids, if it's my friends, if it's my family, if it's my staff. And, it's like a ripple effect. The more I can learn, the bigger the businesses, the bigger the ripple effect. So regardless of how much money it is or what the impact is, the more that we can do, the bigger the ripple of, if it's Queensland, Australia, APAC, the world. How do we see our impact? And then and do it in a humble way where we're like, guys, these are my lessons, these are my crises, this is where I went wrong everywhere, and this is how you can learn from that, and so you don't have to go through the same thing. Now, people are still going to stuff up, they're going to listen because we learn from our own experiences. But if I can help guide the people around me in a way where they don't have to have some of this heartache because I've gone through it, then to me, then that's just an amazing gift that I've given them. So as long as I'm doing that, and I'm making the world a better place, and I'm making the world a better place for the people that come in contact with me, I'll be a happy man.
Thank you so much. You have already started helping us. You're sharing those processes. I love it. I started noting down in my head, because you're the type that learn something but try to digest and create a system, a way that allows others to learn it easily. So thank you so much, Gerard. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me. And if anybody wants to, just find me on, on the network or through LinkedIn or socials. I love catching up with EOers. I love catching up with different people around the world. So please reach out.
Yeah, we'll definitely put all your details in the video description below. So thanks again.
Thank you.